Welcome to Tech Talk. We will be taking a look at AJA's Colorbox. We have with us Tim Walker, who is Senior Product Manager at AJA Video Systems. Tim, it's great to have you with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Janet. I'm happy to be here and share some insights about our cool new product.
Can you start by telling us what is Colorbox and how is it used?
Certainly, yeah. So Colorbox is a new product from AJA, and it has to deal with color managed workflows. So anywhere where color is being processed and converted from one color space to another, or just being color corrected, would be a good use case for the Colorbox. And it's a small device. I've got one over here in my rack over here. So we call it a mini converter. Still fits in that kind of size range, and we can fit 4 of them in one rack unit, and each one of them is a single channel color converter. So it has a 12 GSDI input and output, and it has an HDMI 2.0 output. So we're able to support high bandwidth signals all the way up to 4K 60p in YCbCr 422 or up to 4K 30p in RGB 444 color sampling.
And where does Colorbox fit in the production and post-production pipeline?
Yeah, certainly, the first place you think of a color box or a LUT box, so this is kind of a next generation LUT box, would be in, close to onset. So when you're on set and you're shooting content, you generally have a look that could have been created by a colorist sitting around with your DP, that you want to have for your entire entire program that you're shooting. Whether it's a scripted content or unscripted, you're going to have a look, and so that look is generally in the form of a LUT, and so you'd like to be able to load that LUT into a device on set like this Colorbox to be able to take a camera's output and be able to convert it into a display format for you and the director and the DP to see on set, to make sure you're really capturing the right look on set. And maybe you want to adjust that look as well. And so we have integrations with other companies like Pomfort's Live Grade product and Assimilate Live Looks, where they can actually control the Colorbox and be able to adjust that look just a little bit, so they can adjust it to what they're actually seeing on set, and then they can move that and communicate that look to people further down the line, whether it's in dailies or further in post-production or final color grading.
And that's so crucial, Tim, to be able to see and adjust what you're shooting.
And absolutely. And another part of that, Janet, is actually you want to have properly calibrated monitors. And so in order to have a calibrated monitor, you need to be able to actually calibrate it. So, there's different companies that are out there that offer software that can be used to control the Colorbox to generate test patches which go onto a display. And then they have a colorimeter that actually measures the color and compares it against what the test patch is that we sent to the display. And so their calibration software calculate the differences and then generate a LUT, which can then be loaded into either the display if it has the capability of processing a LUT, or it can be loaded into our Colorbox to then properly calibrate the monitor for many different display formats. So we have integrations with third parties that control the Colorbox, which is one of our key things about it. So as far as the monitor calibration application, we have integrations going with Calman and Light Illusion, and they can control the Colorbox natively through its own API.
Can you tell us about any case studies or success stories where Colorbox has been used effectively?
Certainly, yeah. So the Colorbox is fairly new. We introduced it at IBC last year, but we've had an overwhelming amount of interest in the product, and definitely some success stories. So if you go to our website, aja.com, we have some user stories that are up there that can highlight some of the use cases. And most notably, I worked on set with a DIT, Eduardo Aguia, and we used 2 color boxes to actually look at the 4K signal that was coming off cameras that were on a big LED volume. So all the other displays on set were all in HD, but we wanted to see what, was coming natively out of the camera, what they were going to be recording in 4K with a look applied. And so we were able to put the color box in line and be able to look at what that 4K camera was shooting on the LED volume, apply a LUT to it, and make sure that the color box was processing the video correctly. The ability to see that 4K signal on set and to be able to show the eagle eyes on set what the content is really going to look like before it gets into post-production was a really cool thing to be able to see, and it was a pretty high-profile production. Why don't I go ahead and share my screen, and we can, earlier we spoke about just one use case really on set and also, monitor calibration, but the color box is really a powerful color processing tool. And this is just looking at the user interface. So the product has a built-in web server, which provides this rich user interface for people to interact with it. And the first thing that you see is a confidence monitor right here in the middle showing, the signal as it's coming through and being processed, so you know that you've got a signal going through the box. On the left-hand side, it's kind of like the navigation pane to take you in different places within the product. And then down here is our color processing pipeline. And it's a very intuitive way of seeing a video being processed. On the left side, you can see the video format, color sampling, the HDR, color imagery and transfer characteristic at the input. And then this blue line represents the signal all the way going through all these different 7 nodes of processing all the way to the output. And so as we select these different nodes, the pane on the right-hand side changes to show you the different things that are configurable for each of those nodes. For instance, I've landed here on a 3D LUT node. I can turn it on, and now I can see that it's blue, the same color as the video path. And I've applied a LUT that's a 70s LUT, so which changes the color and shifts it to look kind of like a 70s look. So I've got a library of different LUTs. The color box stores up to 16 3D LUTs, 16 of these 1D LUTs, 16 of these 3x3 matrices, all on its onboard library. And once they're loaded in there, they're very simple to be able to select and cruise through to find the look that you're looking for your various project. So this is the pipeline down here. I mentioned the 7 nodes of processing. This is really something that is very unique to this product, and it's called AJA Color Pipeline. So there's a lot of products that support a 3D LUT, or maybe they even have a 1D LUT on either side of it as shaper LUTs to be able to make sure the code values hit the 0 to 1 of the LUT on the input and then convert it on the output. But we've gone beyond that and added these other 3x3 matrices and additional 1D LUTs. And these can be used for various other types of color correction or color processing, I should say. You might use a 3x3 matrix for trying to match different cameras together. And so that is a very useful tool, and people are very excited to see that in a real-time color processing box like Colorbox. These also could be, if you're working in a different kind of workflow where you need a proc amp, you can change this 3x3 matrix to a proc amp also to help color correct the source before, let me turn it on, before it goes into your 3D LUT processor. If I'm not using the 1D LUT as a 1D LUT, I could also turn it into an RGB color corrector, another tool that's useful in color correcting a signal before it goes into the LUT processor. So, oops, I forgot to turn it on again. So we can color correct the signal before it goes into the 3D LUT processor. It's kind of a nice feature to have. And all these are configurable in the same way. So I can change this into a color corrector and this into a proc amp. So it's a very highly configurable color processing pipeline like the market hasn't seen until now. Something that's pretty neat also at the end of it to kind of help people is this overlay function. So what is an overlay and why do I need it? So an overlay, in our kind of terminology here, we talked to a bunch of DITs on set and they're like, you know what, Tim, it'd be really nice if we could just put some text up here. Maybe sometimes the camera isn't outputting lens metadata and we got a piece of tape that we're putting on a screen. Can we just put some lens information up there so when people are looking at the screen, they know what lens it is, or maybe what filter's been applied to it, or what camera it actually is. Is it the A cam, B cam, whatever it is? Just something I can throw up there to quickly see what that source signal is. So we can overlay text on it. We can overlay different information about the input and output signal as it's going through the color box. We have the ability to overlay whether we're seeing time code on the signal or not, help you troubleshoot the system a little bit. Same thing with closed captioning for our broadcast friends. We can detect if there's closed captioning and tell you if it's there. We have this unique ability to tell you about the pipeline. Like what is going on in here that helped create this image? So I can see the name of the color box, the IP address, what mode I'm in, the different files that may be loaded into each one of the nodes. And then I could actually capture that, which I'll show you in just a minute. But in our version 2 release for Colorbox of the firmware, we introduced this ability to have a user overlay. And a user overlay is something that is an image, a PNG file that you could load into the library of the color box and simply recall it. So we can overlay it on top of the image, and it may be useful for different things like this where you want to have a logo, maybe you want to have the brand of your production that you're on. It could also be, do I have something loaded up here? Frame lines. So another big thing that people have asked for on set is the ability to see frame lines to help them figure out and see what part of the image is going to be captured for use later in post-production, make sure they're getting the right shot. So you can overlay frame lines, custom frame lines. Pretty powerful little node here at the very end of our otherwise, very powerful color processing pipeline. And once you've got something set up, we've got this other little node here, which is called bypass, which bypasses all the processing so you can see the signal before it does any of the processing in the pipeline. So pretty cool stuff. Beyond that, you may have also seen this other node over here called Frame Store. And the Frame Store is another node which allows me to have, if I turn it on here, I can have a test pattern. The color box has a number of test patterns that are built into it. So if I don't have a source applied or on my system, I can quickly get people up and running by showing off or by applying a test pattern. I can configure the output format to a wide range of video formats, all the way up to 4K 60. And I don't know if you see this or not, but we've got 47.95 and 48 there as well, which is helpful for some people. And beyond that, it's a frame store. So we also have another library here that is on board to the color box where I can, if I had some reference images that I wanted to bring in and run through my pipeline, I could load them onto the color box, recall them, and run them through the color processing and see how it's going to look. And you'll see this image doesn't quite fit the raster of UHD that I'm processing. So I can come over here to my video convert and actually scale it as best I can as the color box can to fit the raster that we're processing. So these could be reference images, they could be other test patterns, they could be logos, they could be anything that's a PNG. So it's another one of those cool features to just recall things. But hold on, Janet, there's more. So I can also select a If I do not have my frame store on and I'm processing my source video coming through and I've applied a look to it, I can also come here and I can capture it. So I could come in here and put, you know, test 70s, it's got the LUT applied, and I can capture that as a 16-bit TIFF file, a PNG, or a JPEG. And the 16-bit TIFF is the highest resolution, highest bit depth possible, which is really good for capturing reference stills. So I can capture a reference still of the processed output, and this could have had the overlay applied to it as well, and I could capture that. Or I can also capture the input. So the input would be of the unprocessed image. So a lot of times you might have camera log coming into it, so it's not of a display format, and it's going to be captured in log, so it can be processed in log later to whatever the target dynamic range and transfer characteristic is for the project. But I could come in here and I could select input, and I could capture the input before it's processed, you know, as a reference image. And maybe you want to do that as a TIFF, maybe you want to do it as a lower resolution or lower more compressed signal as a JPEG. So I can overwrite what was in my library and capture that way. So that's a real high level overview of what just one of these pipelines can do. And, you know, you asked a question earlier about, you know, where does this fit in a production pipeline? And this AJA color pipeline could be used anywhere from onset to post-production if you're wanting to test out different looks. Somebody's generated some LUTs. Instead of having to render out different files with different looks, you could just load them into this and play your content through Colorbox and look at it on a display and be able to evaluate a look. Or, gosh, there's so many different places this product can be used. We've also, you can see these other tabs down here. We have ColorFront, ORION-CONVERT, BBC HLG LUTs, and NBCU LUTs. And the reason we have these are there's a lot of live production that is going on today. So live sports production, you think about big events, you know, Super Bowls and FIFA World Cups, and all kinds of different sporting events are being produced in HDR. And there's a lot of conversion that needs to happen between an SDR source and an HDR source, because you want to have a common dynamic range and transfer characteristic being processed in your production switcher. And so these other 4 pipelines allow us to do conversions between SDR, HLG, PQ, in this case Sony. And so these are all different conversions for live production applications. And with ColorFront, we've been a great friend of ColorFront, and they've been friends with us for a number of years. And this is similar color processing that we have in our other product called FS-HDR, which does this HDR conversion stuff as well. So this is, the ColorFront is a licensable option for Colorbox, and offers this TV mode and offers a live mode with different transforms available, a more expanded range that has different camera log format support in it as inputs and outputs, and a different engine behind it that gives you different parametric controls for adjusting the image to make it look just right. So we've got the ColorFront pipeline, we've got the ORION-CONVERT pipeline, and this one is very new to the market. This is one that we worked with a company called Chromorama, and they've developed this ORION-CONVERT, and it's another HDR conversion tool that would be targeted for a live production application. And I think the key thing to note here is that in doing a conversion, we have two different ways to manipulate what's called the knee. And so this allows us to, if we're doing an HLG HDR to an SDR conversion, there's going to be parts of that signal that don't map correctly into SDR and they'll clip. And we want to manage the control of that clipping a little bit to make sure we're getting the right specular highlights off of helmets in a football game or off of the floor of an NBA court or whatever it may be. And so we allow our customers to be able to adjust this knee point in a mount in two different ways, and allows them to have great control over where that and how that compression happens. And the unique thing about this, I would point out, is we're actually doing these conversions in ORION-CONVERT using floating point math. And floating point math is different than a 3D LUT. So a 3D LUT is a lookup table, and while we provide tetrahedral interpolation, which is a big word, but it basically means that in this 3D LUT, we're using a way to try to find the best way to determine what the code value should be for a given pixel between R, G, and B as it goes through a transform. And tetrahedral interpolation is really great at doing that. But floating point math, like we have in ORION-CONVERT, we don't have to have interpolation. We can get the exact code values for the R, G, and B as it goes through the transform, which gets us what I like to call access to the colors between the colors. You know, it's a more precise transform, especially as you're getting out towards the outer ranges of the gamut that you're working in. We've got the ORION-CONVERT, we've got BBC HLG LUTs that are built in, which is another way of doing HDR conversions, very popular in live production workflows. And we've also got the NBC LUTs, which are freely available for people to download from NBC, but we've built them into the Colorbox to make it easier for our live production customers to use. And I'll finish this little demo on one last thing, and that is people say, okay, well, it's great, Tim, you know, it's got all this stuff in it. Something that's really important to us is processing delay. Like, how long is it going to take to get through all these different 7 nodes of processing in your Colorbox? And the answer to that is I really challenged our engineering team to make it the lowest latency possible. And the reason why is, you know, in any production, you don't want to be introducing any more delay into the signal. You want everything as real time as possible, especially in live production. And usually downstream of a product like this would be a production switcher, which usually has auto timers on each of their inputs to be able to buffer different signals at plus or minus half a line. And so I challenged the engineers to make the latency through the box less than half of a video line. And they were able to achieve it for all the different rasters that we support, from HD to 4K. So pretty impressive to be able to do all of this stuff in less than half of a video line, and basically be introducing near zero latency in the color processing pipeline path.
Thank you, Tim. That was a wonderful overview. You guys have done an amazing job in thinking about how Colorbox can be instrumental in not only post-production, but production and live events.
You know, as a product manager tasked with, you know, looking for markets and products, you know, defining products to meet different market needs, we spend a lot of time working with, excuse me, end users, people that want this product. You know, so before we even put pen to paper in our design, we were getting feedback from the people who wanted it. You know, so we're able to make sure that we hit all their requirements for their applications.
There's a lot of expertise in developing Colorbox, but it also looks very user-friendly. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on the user interface, making a lot of different tweaks to it to make sure that not only it kind of fit with, you know, an AJA look and feel, but also was easy to use for our customers. So some of the stuff can be fairly complicated to think about and to understand, and to try to reduce that complexity and make it more visual and easy to navigate was a key design requirement. And with this user interface, it feels like we've hit that mark. It's very easy to navigate, understand what to do. We have a great user manual that goes along with the product, but you generally don't really need it because you can just walk through it and figure out how to use it.
It certainly looks that way. Can you tell us which third-party software Colorbox interfaces with?
Great question. So we spoke a little bit earlier about some third-party integrations with Pomfort's LiveGrade, Assimilate, LiveLooks, LiveAssist, and also the monitor calibration companies of Calman and Light Illusion. But we also have others. So the API is really open to anybody and everybody who wants to control the color box. And so other people have controlled it, people like QTake in their video assist software. But also there's a lot of tools that are in here, like the color correctors that have sliders that you can adjust in the user interface. And some people would rather prefer a knob to be able to turn a hardware knob to be able to adjust some of these parameters. If they're used to color correcting a broadcast camera, they've got those controls on a camera control unit and RCP that are right next to them with the hardware interface. And so we have native support of native control of our color box through two other companies. Scarhoy, which makes different types and shapes of different remote control panels. They can control one or many color boxes all at the same time from their control services. And another company called CyanView, which also makes these RCPs, can control the color correctors and the LUTs and everything in the color box natively from their control panel. So if you're not in favor of using the user interface and want a hardware control panel, we would recommend using either of those companies. So the product, the Colorbox, has this, I mentioned it a couple of times, this robust API. And so we have demo apps that are available on our website to be able to get access to test bits of code, see how it works. And then through the Colorbox, we actually use Open API. So if I share my screen, I've just typed in the IP address of the Colorbox and then /API, and it brings up another rich user interface, which is our Open API for Colorbox. So it shows all the different parameters that are available to be controlled within it, allows you to try it out by making changes to the code and actually testing it. And you can test the code, see what happens to the color box. It generates this curl command, which is then easily usable in your own application. So we've tried to make it very easy for different third parties to be able to utilize the color box and all that it has to offer.
Thank you, Tim. You've done an amazing job giving us an overview of Colorbox. It is an amazing product. We look forward to seeing what else AJA Video Systems comes up with next.
Janet, it's been my pleasure to be here and have this tech talk with you, and look forward to doing it again sometime. Thank you.